June 6, 2021. This is about 4:05 in the morning Pacific Standard Time. Weaver, John C., Roseman, California. This is a letter to Michael Smerconish of CNN News Network. Apologize for the video link earlier on. Unfortunately, I was having technical difficulties, so I am redoing this video all over again. You were talking about Trump being punished, and you thought it was unfair. You thought he needs to be punished, but it's totally unfair what Facebook did. And a long diatribe I was trying to make. Well, let's just make the fresh diatribe, shall we? I disagree with what you're talking about. Entirely. You're dealing with a private entity. You're dealing with a person entity here that has no government jurisdiction over it because of a Supreme Court case. Actually, a few other cases that backed it up in the first place. Now, if you happen to go back to regarding the voter registration situation, citizen versus the United States, there was something about electioneering laws that we had going on. In order to make a corporation a business, responsible and liable and under federal regulation, they have to be proven that they are as such and not as an individual and treated as such. If they are treated as an individual, they are protected under the First Amendment, and therefore no government can have a say in it. And this is regarding the electioneering, as in government seeing too many contributions from corporations dumped into super funds. And because of these laws have already been passed, it has changed our perspective regarding our companies. That they are being held as private entities instead of a business that can be regulated. Therefore, Facebook right now is a private entity that cannot be regulated, and therefore we have no say over it. And I will continue further on it. Mr. Smerconish, Michael, forgive me. It's an interesting name when people call you Smirk. I'd rather not, Michael. When you hit that terms and agreement box, and you hit the OK or the authorization box on any application or any website that you're getting into that happens to deal with communications, including social media, you're basically telling this private entity that you're giving up a hell of a lot of control and rights. And therefore, you're going to be subject under their whim. Now, Facebook has given out a semblance of First Amendment. Enough freedom for you to say something, but hopefully nothing to upset the theoretical community out there at large. Now, we already know what kind of an upset the 45th president has been and currently is and will be. Because of this and what's been happening over the past, several years, we've seen a lot of distressing events happening that's been challenging everybody in every which way but loose, if we're going to be using a title film here. Because of that, as I say that, we have to be careful on what we're doing and saying at this point, because we may be held liable to our consequences of the actions we just taken. If Facebook is found through a Supreme Court decision, through a conservative majority, still indicating that Facebook is still of a private nature, of an individual nature, then we have no say and we have no control as a government over the corporation of Facebook. But if they actually rule one way or another that Facebook is also a business, they are open season under U.S. laws, taxation laws, which means government regulations, which means Zuckerberg is going to have a field day over it. which would give Donald Trump an edge at this point over here. Because I dare mention that damn name. Because this would tell the world that Donald Trump is still alive out there and still has his freedoms, which he still has. Only he feels like he's being strangulated by social media and he's belly aching about the damn thing. Well, I got news for the gas bag. Tough. The telecoms, according to the court decisions out there, have made the telecoms like a person. They're not subject to any regulation. Therefore, they have control. Michael, I'm going to put up an example here. You remember the original cork boards? Look in your office. You see any? Have you ever worked in an office that you actually had cork boards in community rooms? And on those cork boards, what did you find on them? Think back, Michael, to your college days. In a lot of the areas of campus, of community access, how many cork boards were there, and did you happen to remember what was on them? Now, bring up the First Amendment in your head. And now, because of the Supreme Court decisions that we've got going, it makes things more relevant. Back in the 80s, when I was going to college myself, we had those cork boards all over the place. And those cork boards had materials, they had pictures, they had advertisements, they had words. And words matter, now don't they? And on a college campus, words can influence in any which way, including pictures, but subject to a government, the College Board. The College Board. Government. On a campus, that is the government there. And also they have a larger government over them. We didn't have, back then, any laws protecting freedom of speech to a point. Well, we did have the First Amendment. But here's the thing. On the campuses, the school was law. It had to go through an approval process to be posted out there. Much like the information we have these days. Now, I've been going to a community college for over several years right now. In my home valley right now, I should call it these days. Really the armpit of the Southern California, but I'm not going to go into that point. The Antelope Valley has a community college over there that also uses cork boards, but they have advisory boards going through the school system, which acts as their own mini government. And they have to approve what is and what isn't posted. Keep that in mind. Has to be approved what is and what isn't posted. Now we're bringing up to the 21st century level of technology here. You hit the terms and agreements. You hit the okay on the terms and agreements. What's that telling you? You are giving part of your access. You're giving part of your stuff to them, entrusting them. But you're also giving up decision. You're also giving up power of control to something outside of your own. When Donald Trump happened to get on these social media accounts, for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, he had been subject to someone else's private whim. It was only given enough room to maneuver. After that, things things happened. And since he was causing more havoc than what the operator and the owner could deal with, he was shut down. He was judged. And the punishment was just. You piss him off, this is what happens. Was it justified? Yes. Was it unjust? No. Because you're dealing with a private entity here, not a business regulated. You want me to repeat that? You're dealing with a private entity, not a regulated business. And you can thank the Supreme Court decisions for that. The electioneering laws had changed how the United States government looks at the businesses these days. Now, until we get laws going through the U.S. Congress and Senate to change this, it's not going to happen. Unless, of course, we've got other court cases coming through the pipeline up to SCOTUS to change all this. To turn it around to say that the businesses should be looked as businesses, not a person. Because now you're talking about regulation. Now you're talking about government coming in. Now you're talking about government interference. For some people would think that. Now you're saying that the government can actually have a say over someone else's speech. Whether or not it's going to be allowable or not. If it was a government site, and we're dealing with a private entity on a government site, they cannot be censored. They are expressing their First Amendment rights, and yet, on a private, I know, it's global, it's massive, billion users plus, it's still private. You have access codes to get into it. You have passwords and user IDs. Biggest, largest private chain out there to be used. Keep all this in mind, Michael. You can even talk to the scholars about this one. Probably Chris Cuomo may have raised this issue, and I've got to see the video. I have to admit, I hadn't seen the interview between you and Chris Cuomo a few days ago when you guys knocked heads on this one. I still have to see that one. And I may have to do a rebuttal if necessary. But this is my take, and this is my correction on a video link that should have been done in the first place. And my apologies for this. So, you try and have a good week. What's left of it? Weaver, John C., Roseman, California, signing out.